Okay, now that we're logged in, let's talk about some of the functionality for this. First thing you'll notice when we logged in is that you'll see the status of your unit at the top right corner here. You'll also see the sector. This is where you've been dispatched to. This is your home sector, so this being Battalion 1, their home sector is Bellevue Fire Department. You'll also notice here on the right hand upper corner is a green bar. If this bar turns red, that means you're not connected to the network. It could be a Wi-Fi problem, or it could be that the server's down. So if you do this, you've checked all your connections, you have internet connection, and this is still red, you need to call Norcom, let them know that the servers are down. Okay, on the left-hand bottom side, you'll see a address here, and this is being faked into believing it has AVL. It's actually not connected. But this is the current address of the unit. So if you get in your rig and you log in and all of a sudden you see there's nothing down here at the bottom, that means you don't have AVL and you need to contact your support and see if you can get some help getting that fixed. Alright, so let's dispatch this unit to a call. So we're going to dispatch Bellevue Battalion 1 to a call. And the call is going to be at Bellevue City Hall. As we pop that call up, you'll notice that now the screen comes up with all the information. It's got a narrative. Scroll down here, narrative. You can see that some of these narratives are very large, a little bit of functionality. If you double click on this, it opens up a box that shows you all the text for that. So if it's a very long narrative comment, you can actually see that. You'll also notice that it shows the call number. This is the number from CAD. Shows the problem nature, automatic fire alarm, commercial. Shows you the TAC. Now you notice that that TAC is in yellow. The yellow is new information that came from dispatch to the call. Okay, the assignment time, the mobile units that are dispatched, so Battalion 1. You also see the address, apartment or building numbers, what the location name is, so in this case, City of Bellevue or Bellevue City Hall. You have the map, which is your geocode, the city and the cross streets. You also notice that there's some other tabs here that are yellow. So one of them is prior. It shows you all prior calls at this location. It shows you caller information for the person that called in with the call. In this case, I got my name. If there were hazmat associated with this, you'd have a hazmat tab would go enabled. Caution notes are all the caution notes, and you'll notice that these caution notes are also in the narrative. So where this becomes handy is if you're in the narrative and a new piece of information comes in. So like I said, let me add some information to that call. When that information comes, everything turns yellow and it goes to the top of the screen. You notice that because I had clicked on the narrative, it stayed where I had clicked on. If I were to get out of that, click someplace else, then we would be able to, it would show something different. It would show up there. So here's the narrative. You notice as I do the narrative, everything in the narrative turned yellow. All right. So one thing I would recommend is, as you're going through this process, that when you get a bunch of yellow on the box, hit the clear button right here, which is the right hand corner of the screen. When you clear that, it doesn't clear the call. What it clears is the yellow highlighting. So as new information comes up, so in this case, let's say that the TAC changed. As soon as the TAC changes, then that TAC will appear in yellow, so you can tell at a glance if there's new information. Okay? Premise information is the premise information. What I was going to show you is that the caution notes, when they're in this box, they also show up here. And so as new information comes into this section, if you need to see the caution notes, you can go back to the caution notes. It shows them in this dialog box that's separate, so you don't have to scroll around in this. All right. So let's talk about status buttons. You'll notice that we have big status buttons of en route and on scene, in quarters, and on the air. We also have other buttons here, which are the transporting at destination available, staged, some other optional, some query history buttons, night and day buttons, the nav bar, and the log off. The reason we set the screen up this way is because when you're using the MDC and you go to look at something else, so in this case, let's look at the map. To get back to the call, you have to hit this small call button up here. What we didn't want to have happen was people randomly, accidentally pushing the wrong buttons, like putting themselves available. So we put those buttons in another button down below here, so that you push this, you don't hit the wrong button. Okay? If you want to get back to the call, all we do is click that little call button and we jump back to the call. So let's step through the status changes. What I'm going to do is push the en route button, and when I push that en route button, what you should see is this dispatched status change from dispatch to en route requested, and then it should go to en route. So let's try that. Okay, hopefully you saw that. Went from en route requested to en route. Once this changes, that means that you are in that status in CAD. Thing to know on this too is if you push the button and it doesn't go en route, it stays en route requested, that means you've lost connectivity somehow. The good news is that the MDC will stay in that mode. It'll stay en route requested or on scene requested, and as soon as you regain connectivity, that'll send that information to CAD, and it'll overwrite the timestamps on CAD. So if you look at that, put yourself en route, it says en route requested. I'd recommend getting on the radio, letting dispatch know that you're en route, because they'll be calling you to find out why you didn't respond. And then once the mobile updates, it'll change the timestamp to be the actual button push time. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to put ourselves staged. Now stage is another button. So we click the other button, we click staged. It's going to say staged request, and it's going to go to staged. Everybody saw how that worked? Okay, once we're staged, we can go on scene. Works exactly the same, at scene, requested at scene. Now let me show you some functionality, because I want to make sure everybody understands this. There are some buttons that you have that if you push the button again, it'll give you an error. So in this case, once we're at scene, I can't go back en route. So I push the en route button, it flashes en route requested, then it goes back to at scene. And you'll notice the info button, which is a lot like Interact, will start flashing. If you go to that, it'll show you that your current status for call number, this call, is at scene. You're unable to change the vehicle status. It's just warning you that you can't do something that's illegal. Okay, the only way to change yourself from at scene to en route is to call dispatch and have them change your status. Okay, some functionality I think is important to know is once you've read this message, if you don't need to keep it, it'd be a good idea to delete it. All right. The other thing is this will keep flashing. The info button will keep flashing until you've read all the messages in the queue. So if you have 4 or 5, you've got to read each one. So what I recommend is read it, then delete it, and get that queue empty. Okay, now we're on scene. Let's go back to the call. Now we're on scene. Obviously, you'll notice that in this, there's no patient contact, because patient contact is a status that has to happen when you're at the patient. So it's kind of hard to have the MDC in the rig follow you up to the patient. So you can't put patient contact, but we can call the dispatch center, call into dispatch and say, I'm patient contact. And when you do that, you'll see the status at the top of the screen changes to patient contact. You also notice that you get a info flash. And what that's saying is that you didn't change the status, that CAD changed, that dispatch changed the status. Okay, let's go back to the call. The next thing we're probably going to do from this point is we're going to go to transport, or we're going to go back available. So let's go transport. When you click on transporting, it's going to pop up a box that shows all the hospitals that are currently in the system. This list is being edited, so hopefully by the time you see this, you'll have got a smaller list. But let's just pick a hospital and put ourselves responding. So in this case, let's pick Northwest Hospital. Once you've picked a hospital, the next time you come into this dialog box, that hospital will be the one that's highlighted. So if you go to the same hospital over and over again, you shouldn't have to change this, but you can also change it if you need to. Another thing to know is that if you are in the beginning of the list and you want to get to the bottom of the list, you can type the first letter of the hospital, and it'll take you to that section. So if I want to go to Northwest, I type N. If I want to go to Applied Alternative Medicine, you go there. Just push the first letter. In this case, we're going to go to Northwest Hospital, and I'm going to submit that. Now you'll notice that the transport information now will show you that you're going to Northwest Hospital. This is their address. The protocol is automatically assigned to non-emergency. If you're going emergency, it's not being updated in this. It's not unless your jurisdiction has a problem with that. If they have a problem, then what you need to do is contact dispatch. They can change that. The other thing is, if you go transporting and you get diverted en route, you cannot go back and hit the transport button and change it again. It won't allow you. So let's say I'm going to go transport to Overlake, hit submit. You'll notice that the transport doesn't change, and you get an info message saying unable to change vehicle status because you're already transporting. So in this case, what you do is we do like we do in all things in the fire service, contact dispatch by radio, and they'll change your transporting status to the new location. Okay, once we're at destination, click the at destination button. You notice it changed, and now our status is at destination. Okay, once we've left the hospital, we can go available. Now the available button is here. At this point, let's talk about the difference between available and on the air. Both of these have similar functions. They put your unit in the available status, The difference is this available status asks for a disposition code. You have to have a disposition code in CAD to close the call. So if you use on the air to close a call, what will happen is that call will go back to the dispatcher. The dispatcher will then get a message saying they have a new call that hasn't been dispatched, and they will redispatch units to that call. So it's imperative that as you go through this process, when you're on a call, that your next status after either on scene or at destination is available. When I click available, you notice that it gives me a clear call disposition. 99.9% of the time, that disposition is going to be 999, completed fire call with number. Click submit, and you'll notice that it went from available requested to available. Okay. Last piece of this is in quarters. Once you do in quarters, you're back in quarters, you're ready to go. A little bit of knowledge for you. Okay, now that everybody's got AVL, if you haven't experienced this before, once you put yourself available or on the air, you will be assignable and dispatchable based on your location by AVL. So you need to make sure that you're in the jurisdiction that you want to be in when you put yourself available. If you respond to a Bellevue call, for example, and you're from Shoreline, you put yourself available in Bellevue, you very well may be dispatched to a call in Bellevue if you're the closest unit. So be aware that as soon as you push that available button, you become dispatchable. Okay, let's go back here and look one more time at available. If I put myself available now from quarters, I can do this. It'll ask me for a cleared call disposition code. You can use 999, doesn't have an effect on anything. But what I want to show was that you notice that now 999 is the default here. So at that point, all I should have to do is hit enter and it'll put me available. Okay. If I push the on the air button, you'll notice that I go available, but I don't have to hit a disposition code. So make sure to emphasize that that available status in other buttons is the one you would use for a call. This button in the other buttons, or in the outside buttons, is for use when you're in quarters and you're leaving to go, say, for a drill or some other function. Okay, let's put me back in quarters. And that concludes the basic functionality stuff for mobile.